Welcome back to the left of Old North. I'm your host, Adrian.
And I'm CJ.
Also your host. I feel like you forget to say that
Also
sometimes. Yeah. We're both hosts.
I probably do, yeah.
We're co-hosts.
Yes.
We're in this together, for better or worse.
In sickness and in health, till death or gerrymandering do us part.
Oh, no. Yeah, we're going to get split along voting lines. You're probably wondering, especially if you've listened to the show before, why we're uploading a random episode on a Friday. And the reason is because we talked this week, and there is just too much stuff to fit into half an episode on Monday. Because we've got a very special guest that we interviewed. Do we want to go ahead and say who it was, or are we keeping that a mystery?
Why not? No. Yeah, let's go and do it. Tease it a little bit.
Yeah, so we actually got Chris Cooper, from the professor from WCU, who recently published Anatomy of a Purple State. He's a very influential political scholar and pundit here in North Carolina. We were extremely excited and lucky to get him on the podcast, and he had a lot of great stuff he imparted his wisdom upon us, I think is the best way to put it. But there was too much stuff that happened. We were like, there's no way we're going to fit this into 30 minutes, either before or after our interview with him. So we've got to do another one. We just have to.
Yeah.
So
we owe it to you, dear listeners.
We do. The people need to know. They thirst for knowledge. And
specifically from us.
Yeah. And if they continue to not get SNAP benefits, they're going to be hungry for a lot more, unfortunately. And part of the reason is because just earlier today, the NC General Assembly passed its budget, or at least the House did, and nearly every single Democratic amendment was shot down. And CJ, what were some of those amendments?
One of the ones that stands out to me the most is universal school lunch, free school lunch. And it was just, shot down. I cannot remember which Republican had the honor, of asking his colleagues to vote no. But essentially what he said was, we don't want to take away, we cannot afford to take away from our voucher program to fund free school lunch. I'm sorry, you were talking about the, $1 billion voucher program you've got going?
Yeah.
You can't afford to take that away to give to hungry kids. Now, Adrian, I could be wrong, but, we're both fathers, and while our kids aren't quite in, school yet, I believe we will be correct in saying that, hungry kids don't learn.
That's not a stretch at all. And as somebody with a kid, dude, can we not just give them school lunches? That is something I want my tax dollars to go to. You know what I don't want my tax dollars going towards?
What?
Rich kids in Durham, Raleigh, and Charlotte, they get to go to a private Christian school on their parents' dime. Oh, wait, it's not even their parents' dime anymore. Courtesy of the taxpayer.
But,
And they better not hope that they're going to a very Orthodox Christian school and then later come out as gay, because apparently in states like Tennessee, just to the west of us, they held somebody's graduation certificate because this girl came out as gay. Yes, this girl came out as gay right before, or I think it was right before graduation, and they withheld her graduation. They withheld her diploma.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So not a far stretch of the imagination to think that might happen here. But anyway, that's a big aside. Not happening in this state, but it could happen here is my point.
Yeah. Well, I watched these amendments get voted on, right? And I counted it. What I text you? It was 45 or something like that amendments.
Yeah.
Only 3 passed. One of them was Republican. The other 2 are Dems. And the rest got voted down, or a few of them were tabled cannot remember which ones, but I remember like listening to them being like, "Oh, they're not even gonna like allow a vote on that." I think one of them was going to help veterans in some way. I can't remember what it was exactly, but the Republicans were like, "Yeah, we're just going to table that one for now,
Yeah.
so we don't have to vote against it."
Yeah, why have an actual discussion about it when you can just shoot it down? You like,
Exactly.
especially if it's from a Democrat, right? Might as well just throw it out straight into the trash bin.
Exactly. Exactly. My thing is their ability to do that, to just shoot all these down, to not have that conversation, to not have to have that conversation, is result or a symptom, however you want to phrase it, really,
Hmm.
of a broken system.
Yeah.
You know, our democracy here in North Carolina is not a healthy one at all,
No.
and it's due to stuff, and it allows for behavior like we saw in the House yesterday.
Right, but if you were to pay attention to anything that the North Carolina GOP is talking about, everything's hunky dory. Everything's great, in fact. And according to the NC House Press Twitter account, which has just been spewing a bunch of Republican propaganda for to the I mean to the masses, I guess, of 17 bots that like it. But the point is that one of the claims that they made, CJ, was that North Carolina is number 1 in starting teacher pay.
So I will say, I think they raised it to starting teacher pay went from 40 to 50K, right? Now that was not quite what Governor Stein was asking for. He was asking for I think it was like a 10.2% raise. This was a 8.2 or 8.4% raise. Um, and here's the thing, like 40 to 50,000. Oh yeah, no, we obviously that is an increase,
Right.
but the bar is in hell as far as I'm concerned as far as what teacher pay should be. It should not be 50,000. It should, in my opinion, it should be 60. It
Hmm.
should be 70. You know, to quote The West Wing, which I know you love, Adrian, um, like, public education should be incredibly expensive, but also free, just like national defense.
That's a good line.
Yeah. Thank you, Aaron Sorkin. Um, but like, no, it's absolutely insane. Like 40 to 50, cool, big whoop. You should be doing more.
No, I completely.
Yeah. But here we are. And the thing is, the Senate, from what I understand, they agreed to a teacher raise of I think 2%.
Hmm.
And so now that this bill has passed the House, it has to go, well, has passed the House. The two chambers have to essentially fight and compromise on this.
Yeah.
You
So
got Phil Berger on one side and Destin Hall on another. Phil Berger is kind of notoriously an asshole. Like
so
the Senate, I would argue, is more to the right than the House is.
so dumb it down a little bit for me, because I may have missed a detail there. So the cuts, or excuse me, the raises for this starting teacher pay are going to be higher from what the House is trying to pass than what the Senate would potentially want.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
The House said, "Hey, we'll give an 8% raise." The Senate was like, "Hey, we'll give a 2% raise." So I don't know. Hopefully they'll land on 6%.
I mean, if they had it their way, it probably just, if they could really get away with it, it would be 0%. I mean, we have to give credit to them at least trying to get it up.
Yeah,
But again, like you said, the bar is in hell. We have, at the same time that these teachers are going to get paid a little bit more, we still don't even get beyond the top half of the country in starting teacher pay.
yeah,
We're barely over the highest amount for any other state in the Southeast. And it
Oh
has
yeah, and I
been, we have already lost so many teachers because of how low the pay was here that it almost doesn't matter if you raise the pay now, because what really needs to be happening is that the pay needs to be substantially higher, and you need to actually have better working conditions for teachers in the state. But they're not going to do that because, I mean, why do that when you can just spend money on voucher programs?
exactly. I good lord.
It's a lot.
I
It's a lot.
Yeah, no, it is. It
And
is.
by the way, we haven't even scratched the surface of this bill. This is just like the three
Yeah, we
bigger
have.
things.
Yeah, I think they've also thrown in like bringing back the tax-free weekend for back to school shopping essentially here in North Carolina, which I remember like growing up, like my mom, my stepdad would be like, "Okay, cool, we'll go get your stuff on this date,
Yeah.
right? Like this weekend." And I remember going to like Walmart and seeing the school supply aisles just packed with people. Parents just it was like Black Friday but for school supplies. Just grabbing stuff off shelves, like trying to take advantage of the tax-free weekend. You had teachers in there because they're not adequately supplied. Like shanking people just to get like an
With
extra box of color
Well,
pencils.
you're shanking them with the box of colored pencils that you just got. So
Yeah,
I mean, it's handy. Anyway, we're getting way off track now. Sorry. What we really need to pivot to, because again, we gotta run through this. There is too much stuff to
yeah, no, we
cover.
do. Yeah,
We now need to pivot to the federal budget, because if today wasn't enough of a kick in the ass, we also got to see the one big beautiful bill pass in the House. Yes, CJ's like, he's giving me this death look of like, I can't take much more.
this bourbon's not enough.
We can't show that on YouTube. Um, the federal budget passed today in the wee hours of the morning. It was an all nighter, by the way, by one vote. And we're not, this isn't breaking news. I mean, this has been all over social media at this point, but I think what we really need to acknowledge, and what I've only seen a few people talking about, is why it was only by one vote.
Yeah, there, and this when I say this pisses me off to no end, I can't emphasize how much. So it passed by one.
I also have to say, it feels like walking on eggshells a little bit sometimes to talk about this.
Yeah, but it does, but it needs to be talked about because
Yeah.
it is a problem at this. Currently, there are three vacant Democratic seats in Congress. And there is no urgency to fill them. And reason why there are three vacant Democratic seats are because three Dems have died this year alone, six in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And the most recent of which was just, what, 2 days ago? Or actually, it may have been yesterday. I can't remember which.
No, it was 2 days ago.
Jerry Connolly. Yeah, Jerry Connolly, who I think we may have talked about on the pod a few episodes ago.
We did mention him briefly when we were talking about them. We mentioned the gerontocracy and all that, and
Yeah.
the fact that he's in his mid-70s, the man has throat cancer, and because it was his turn, now he needs to be in charge of the oversight committee, which is one of the most important committees that anybody in a minority party can ever hope to be in charge of. Because unlike most committees, the minority party is in charge of the oversight committee. And that's an important distinction, because I don't think a
Yes.
lot of people who like pay attention to the periphery of politics really understand that this is huge. This is what keeps the majority party in check.
At least somewhat. Yeah.
Well, to the best of their ability, yeah. I mean, but it is something. It is a great way for Democrats to communicate, because all those snippy conversations that you see in the committee chamber halls, all those viral clips that you see of Jasmine Crockett going off on Marjorie Taylor Greene, that happened in the oversight committee.
And Jerry Connolly not too long ago announced that he was stepping down from the chairmanship. right?
Yeah.
And, essentially cited his health because he had advanced throat cancer. And also mentioned that he was going to be retiring,
Mm-hmm.
right? And sure enough, a couple of days ago, he passed away. And that this isn't to say, you know, this isn't to like walk on his grave or try to speak ill of the dead.
No,
He
not at
was
all.
a great public servant. You know, like I even if they're on the other side of the aisle, for the most part, at least, I have a great respect for someone who is willing to put themselves out there, put themselves out in the public eye, and open them up to that level of just incredible scrutiny. You know,
Yeah.
I have a tremendous amount of respect for that. But the fact is, he was put into that position because Nancy Pelosi from a hospital bed in Germany was whipping votes to get him in there because, as you said, it was his turn. But this speaks to a larger problem, and it is just the age of Congress. I'm not saying we
Not that
need
it
to have
matters, but
term.
I thought she was in Switzerland or
Yeah,
Luxembourg or something.
maybe
It doesn't matter.
I don't remember,
But
but
yes.
hospital bed over. There you go.
Yeah.
But like, this doesn't say we need to have like term limits or anything like that. But I'm really starting to come around on the idea of age limits, and it's simple because we cannot allow this type of thing to happen.
Right.
You know, there's people will get in there and they'll stay in there for years and years and years, decades, literal
Yeah.
decades, and
As I've said before, long enough for someone to be born, turn 18, be able to vote for them, and then have their own kid. That kid grows up, turns 18, and is still able to vote for that exact same congressperson. That is
yeah.
insane.
You know what? It's even the case here in the state house. I cannot remember her name. I was listening to her speak, but one of the Republicans in the state house. I looked her up. She's like 80.
Oh my gosh.
She's been there for 19 terms.
Wow.
So just call it 40 years. Literally half her life has been spent in the state house.
That is actually wild.
But, yeah, no, it is. But to like bring it back to the federal stuff,
Mm-hmm.
like we cannot allow our unwillingness, and by our I mean Dems, our unwillingness to ruffle feathers and piss off someone. We cannot, you know, allow our unwillingness to do that to allow or to let bad policy pass because of that.
Right.
You know,
Yeah, because if we
we
had had one
dropped
of
the
these
ball.
Democrats in office, like alive, and that's again,
Yeah,
death is inevitable, but it is also not something you can predict all the time, right?
right.
Yeah, somebody might have cancer, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you know exactly when they're going to die. So you can't plan for that. And my biggest problem is that like we do have such an issue where on the left we've had so many members of the Democratic Party in recent years pass away from various
Mhm.
different circumstances. And when it happens, Republicans will always take advantage of that. And that's not limited to
Oh
Congress
yeah,
people either. I mean, let's look back at the reason that Amy Coney Barrett is on the Supreme Court. It's because Justice Ginsburg just did not leave the Supreme Court when she could have, when she
yeah,
probably should have. And again, respect to her. But at the same time, we need to know when it's time to pass the torch, because passing the torch is essential. And politics is not a marathon. Politics is a baton race. And
yes, it is. And there,
each passing of the baton might be a marathon, but you have to be prepared to pass it on. Because if you don't,
yes,
then there's nobody to pass it to, and you're rudderless. And are you seriously going to tell me that in the 30 years that you've been in Congress, you haven't found one single person that you have mentored enough that you are ready to pass the baton on to them? You give them your endorsement and you use all of your power, all of your connections, all of your money to get them elected. It is about ego to some of these people. It absolutely is.
Yes.
And those are the kinds of
Yes.
people that we need to be primarying and getting out of office, because not that we disrespect you, not that we hate your policies. It's time. Hang it up.
And that's at least partly where, the whole David Hogg thing comes into play.
Yeah.
His desire to primary us on these folks.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying, again, did he roll that idea out the best? Probably not. But
no, and I think we've agreed on that.
Yeah. Doesn't change the fact that we do need to take action. We truly do. And again, I want to emphasize for like the third or fourth time, it's not because you're old, necessarily. It's just...
But it becomes harder when you are older,
It does. Like you were talking about, this is a baton race, when you get to a certain point, there's someone there to take the baton. What happens? You drop the baton, and the Republican Party snatches it up.
It's a great way to put it. Yeah. It's absolutely true. Because a really good example is also Raul Grijalva in Texas, who died last year. Mm-hmm. And because the governor in Texas, Governor Greg Abbott, who, anyway, I'm not going to get into that. He has the power to call special elections, and he is refusing to. He's not going to do it. He's going to wait until November, which means that anybody that is in Texas's 13th district right now does not have a representative. Just has nobody in Congress advocating for them. You can go a couple months like that, almost a full year. That's insane.
Yeah.
And here's the last part of this, because we do need to move on again. Probably the most high profile example of this right now, and probably the most unfortunate because of just how devastating it is for him and his family. Joe Biden was recently diagnosed with prostate cancer, aggressive prostate cancer, as
stage 4.
Stage 4. And, we saw people online saying, we hope he recovers, which is it's a sweet sentiment. But if you know anything about cancer, and if you know anything about prostate cancer in particular, look, he's 80.
It doesn't look good.
It doesn't look good. He's not long for this world. And they know that. They are very well aware of that. When one party is held together with retirement home duct tape, it becomes a problem. And we've said many times, sometimes jokingly, sometimes seriously, that Congress is not a nursing home. This is what we mean. Now, Joe Biden was not in Congress, but Joe Biden was president, but he was in Congress for almost 40 years.
Yeah, that's right.
The upper echelons of power for 40 years, and then he became president, and he served his time. He's done, but we saw the end result of that long stretch of power right there at the end of his time in public office. It was visible. And all of this is coming to light now. All of the Democratic operatives that we knew the whole time, please don't blame us. They're all coming out in full force. Jake Tapper just released a book.
Yep, that's right.
So, But here's the last part I'm going to say, because we didn't even really touch on the bill. Almost $800 billion to cuts in Medicaid, the largest in U.S. history. And we're slashing funding for essential programs across the board. There's going to be giant tax cuts for the ultra-rich. No tax on tips was something that was put into this bill, and as if that's supposed to be some kind of consolation. And it's like a crouton on a salad, right? We are fighting and praising scraps being given to us from the table, and the rest of it is being withheld from us. It's like somebody gave us the turkey stuffing and said that that's good enough, and then they threw the turkey in the trash. In this next segment, because of this bill being passed, and we didn't really get to a whole lot of it, but there's a lot in this bill. This is one of the biggest spending bills that has ever been passed. I mean, there's a reason that they called it one big beautiful bill. I prefer to call it a big stupid ugly bill, but that's just me. So we're going to call our senators tonight on air and leave them a message, because that's what everybody needs to be doing. There is not much else that we can do before this bill gets to the Senate, because they're going to be the last line of defense. While I am not holding my breath, I'm going to be completely candid and honest with everybody. While I'm not holding my breath that Ted Budd or Tom Tillis is actually going to vote against this bill, it's time to put up or shut up. We really need to mobilize and make sure that people are actually taking part in the process and taking power where we can. Because if you're not, and you're just sitting on your thumbs at home and thinking, well, there's not anything I can really do anyway, I don't actually have any power. Yeah, but you can make a phone call. Yeah. You can make a phone call. We're going to make 2 phone calls right now. So we can either rock, paper, scissors for it, or, you're the older out of the 2 of us, so I think you could take the senior senator, Mr. Tom Tillis himself.
Jesus Christ. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well,
he's only older by a year and a half, I think.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I do want to say before we do, Adrian and I do have a script that's been put together that, if people are curious about, we can, send to you somehow. Just let us know.
We will post it online along with the clip of us doing this, so that hopefully that will motivate some people to actually get on board, and they're going to try to move this quick. So we don't have a whole lot of time to actually get it out and make calls. So take the opportunity and do it today.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to put it on speaker so y'all can hear. Hopefully It comes through on the audio here, and we'll go from there.
Hello, this is Tom Tillis, Senator from the great state of North Carolina.
It's the office of United States Senator Ted Budd.
I'm sorry we missed your call. If you'd like to leave a detailed comment for me or a member of my staff about legislation, please press 1.
Wait while I transfer your call.
Please leave your message after the beep.
Hi, my name is Clayton Robinson. I am a resident of Raleigh, North Carolina.
Hello, my name is Adrian. I'm a resident of Clayton, North Carolina, and I'm calling to express outrage over your support for the federal budget.
And I'm just calling to express outrage over your support for a federal budget
that includes nearly $800 billion in cuts to Medicaid.
That includes nearly $800 billion in cuts to Medicaid. What is wrong with you?
To call it one big beautiful bill is insulting.
This is the largest attack on healthcare for working families in American history.
And it passed by just 1 vote in the House.
3 Democratic seats remain vacant because of recent deaths. That's not fiscal responsibility like you claim to be.
That's not fiscal responsibility. That's exploitation of a broken system.
On top of that, this budget slashes funding for essential services, deregulates big pharma,
and gives massive tax breaks to the wealthy. But you want me to believe that no tax on tips is some kind of a working class win?
It is honest to God insulting. How dare you?
Here in North Carolina, we're headed into hurricane season with FEMA underfunded and rural forestry services cut down to the bone.
Our state is more vulnerable than ever, and instead of protecting us, you sold us out to billionaires.
I'm asking you directly, do you believe the people of North Carolina deserve health care, disaster preparedness, and dignity?
Or just scraps and sound bites? Because your vote will make it crystal clear where your priorities lie.
Your vote will make it crystal clear where your priorities lie. I urge you to vote no on this upcoming bill in the Senate.
And I urge you to vote no.
We are watching, and we will remember.
You've reached the maximum length for a recording. To send this message, press pound or hand.
There we go.
Beautiful. I tried to make myself sound a little bit more flustered, But
Yeah.
no,
That righteous anger.
yeah. Well, and honestly, like I didn't have to play it up that much because it is we are right to be pissed. Yeah, don't let anybody tell you that you are somehow undeserving of your anger and your anxiety about this, because you should be pissed.
Mm-hmm. You have every right to be. You have every right to rant and rave about a system of government, or an elected body, I should say, of government that obviously does not give a shit about you.
It's the most patriotic thing you can do. And
Exactly.
you can start by calling your senators. So go ahead. We're going to allow you to pause the podcast right now. We're going to read out their phone numbers so you can give them a call right now, or you can go to their website. They have emails there. So what was Tom Tillis's phone number?
So Tom Tillis's number was 202-224-6342. Say it again. 202-224-6342.
And Ted Budd was...
And what about good old Bud?
Sorry. And Ted Budd was 202-224-3154. That's 202-224-3154. Call now, because democracy is at stake. And we
next 10 minutes.
Call in the next 10 minutes if you actually want to save a starving child. Anyway, the starving child being the kids that aren't going to get school lunches. So it's cool that you were laughing about that, CJ. Very, very cool, man.
That was more of a, oh dear God.
Just trying to get you canceled. It'll happen. One of these episodes, it's going to happen.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm waiting for it. A couple of things that we are honestly got pissed about with this stuff is, with this bill, pharmaceutical industry has been deregulated. Taxes on the wealthy, just untouched. They are just getting away scot-free with paying little to no taxes. While you, me, everyone listening to this who makes, I think it's less than $175,000, has their tax burden go up.
Mm-hmm.
Workers are, with this no tax on tip thing, just fed, good vibes and good luck. And then just get a nice kick in the ass out the door.
Yeah. And I mean, aside from just the material problems, we're going to experience some serious environmental problems, both in our cities and in our forests. Just like North Carolina is known for the western half of the state being this beautiful landscape of forestry. And right now, part of what they're doing is they're cutting the essential services for forests. And with hurricane season coming, this is going to be essential. We're going to cover that a little bit more, but like Western North Carolina is still vulnerable. Helene's damage is it's still very, very much affecting that part of the state, especially in that area, in that Buncombe County area. And like they're trying desperately. They're trying desperately right now to keep tourism and to keep hospitality, their big industries out there, alive, because that's people's livelihood. So
it is.
It's all of this stuff is bundled together. We are an ecosystem, and in a capitalist system, when you don't take care of people, when you don't take care of your environment, eventually the system will come crashing down around you, like a house of cards.
I went to Asheville earlier this month for a friend's wedding, and Adrian, I just want an audience listening, I guess. I just want to paint you a little bit of a picture of what I saw, right? So we were staying in a hotel probably about 5 minutes from Biltmore Village, right? So for those of y'all who had never been to Asheville or at least Biltmore Village, it's this area of Asheville done up super elegant, super swanky because it's just right off the property of the Biltmore House estate, right? And so it's all built to have a very like highbrow, high-end sort of look, right? They are famous for having a two-story McDonald's with a player piano in it. Um, but my wife and I stayed probably about 5 minutes from Biltmore Village, and obviously there's like a little stoplight outside of our hotel. If you turned right at the stoplight out of the parking lot, you got to and went down 5 minutes, you got to the village. 5 minutes the other way, you started getting to places like Arden, like these little kind of smaller offshoots of Asheville. Arden mostly like untouched, right? My wife had one of her grandmas lives in that area. They lost power for a few days, right?
Yeah.
Take a right at that stop line, you get to the village 5 minutes down the road. So like maybe 10-minute difference between these two areas. They are still rebuilding. The buildings there, some of them just completely boarded up. Weeds growing up around them. Looks like they've been untouched.
Right.
They're done. They're gone. Right. Other buildings, at one point I remember stopping at a stoplight and just kind of looking inside one of them, and they were down to the studs. I'm like, well, that seems a little bit weird for repairs. You think they just maybe replace the drywall or something like that. And I got to think about it. No, they've got mold.
Yeah. That was my first thought as well.
Yeah. Yeah. You look at the outside of the buildings, and all of them, if you don't know what you're looking at for a second, once it hits you, it can be jarring. All the buildings on the outside have these marks, and it's the water line.
Oh my gosh.
It was how high the floodwaters got. Some of them were past the windows, above the windows. And, we were, 7 months or so removed from the hurricane. They're still rebuilding. They're still repairing. And like Adrian said, they need tourism now more than ever. Especially like downtown Nashville. These are stores that rely on tourism. The entire Western North Carolina area relies on tourism.
Yeah.
They've got the...
It's not exactly
leaf
a wealthy area, so...
Right, it's not. But, you've got the leaf peepers in the fall, right? Which is when Helene hit and destroyed their economy, or destroyed their tourist season, I should say.
Yeah.
And you look around, and there are still, a bunch of trees down, right? And obviously, there's only X amount of workers available. There's X amount of funds available, right?
Yeah.
Because the federal government's not doing shit for the area, right?
No.
The most help we're going to have at this point in Western North Carolina is from the General Assembly. But you look around and you see all these trees down, I see kindling.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because, I mean, it's not like it stayed wet, right?
Right, exactly. It dries. And all it takes is one rogue lightning strike from summer storm or one careless person putting out their cigarette. It can all go up.
And again...
Which does more damage.
And again, this area known for its dense forestry.
Yeah.
And they're old forests, too. That's another thing. It's, it's not any of this new growth stuff. Like, these mountains and these forests have been here for millennia.
Yeah. They are millions of years old.
Yeah. So
they are literally older than bones.
Vulnerable is putting it lightly. And if tourists won't come and businesses won't stay, then what's left for people out there? It becomes a lot harder to live. And like you said, if fires actually come, they're not going to wait for us to decide what to do in the General Assembly. It's just going to roll through.
Mother Nature doesn't give a shit about politics.
Sure doesn't. And and I wish we were being hyperbolic here. Like we with climate change and with the inability to attack it anymore because we're past the point of no return. A lot. This isn't my opinion. This is what ecologists and climate scientists say. We're past the point where we can really do anything meaningful to address climate change. The world is just kind of screwed now. What we can do is mitigate it, right? We can do some damage control. Meanwhile, we're far more concerned about not giving school lunches to children. We're far more concerned about making sure that Doge can go and cut essential services that are, too expensive for the federal or for the state government to be in charge of. And actually, that's something that happened this week too. Not to go off on a tangent, I mean, this is something we're going to talk about, but I think it's relevant, is that just today, as we're recording this, we were blessed with Brad Briner, the treasurer, being given power over North Carolina's version of Doge, which you said was called Dave, right?
So yeah,
If anybody's seen Smiling Friends, the show from Adult Swim, I'm immediately thinking of Dave World. So,
Dave.
yeah, it's off the cuff. I'm sorry, but but go watch the show. It's funny. And when I think about what Dave is going to do to this state, that it's like trying to pick off just a little bit more chicken off of a chicken wing that has already been just like every single piece has been taken. This analogy is a little weird.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I just pulled up an article from WUNC, which is NPR, essentially. Yeah, so it's called the DAVE Act, which stands for Division of Accountability, Value, and Efficiency. It would be led by the auditor, Dave Bullock, who we've talked about a couple times on here. But essentially, if the bill became law, all state agencies would submit reports by October 1st, justifying their existence and explaining any vacancies that have gone unfilled for at least 6 months. Bullock said, "My commitment is to do this in a nonpartisan way that's data-centric." Blah, blah, blah. I'm going to skip down a little bit. There we go. Dave would be required to recommend positions for elimination, as well as state offices or agencies that should be dissolved. Those findings would be due and report to the General Assembly by December 31st.
Interesting. Okay, so I was wrong. Sorry. I am mixing up two different things. So Brad Briner was given they passed a bill to strip investment control from the state treasurer and hand it to a political board, which is appointed by legislative leadership. So
we can trust them.
Right. So again, okay, I said this months ago, maybe not on this podcast, but I said this months ago, that everything they're doing is they're just trying to consolidate all power in the General Assembly. That's it. They want to take it away from the courts, both appellate and supreme. They want to take power away from the governor's office, which we've already seen them do that multiple times. They want to take power away from the council of state. They want all the power to be firmly concentrated in the hands of the legislature. Why? Because if all of the power is there, then it's not an autocracy anymore, right? It's something worse almost. Now there's just this like faceless conglomerate, this faceless body of people deciding together to make things happen for the state so they can keep and retain, so that they can retain power for themselves. The legislature also has the ability to cut up its own maps, which is part of why our state is gerrymandered to hell at the state level. I mean, not just at the state level, obviously, but go look at our state house and state senate maps. Like, really go take a look at them and tell me that that's fair.
Just want to take a second to talk about taking action again,
Yeah,
really
because
fast.
let's be honest, this one's been a downer, and we're sorry about that.
Yeah,
I wish this was a
Well,
bonus episode. We could have done a bonus episode on like Allison Riggs winning, but like,
yeah. But like, this is stuff that needs to be talked about, and that the fact is, politics is not always, or even mostly, or partly sunshine and rainbows. This is the truth, and this is what people need to know. You know, but
well,
what can we do to like stop this shit?
sorry, I was just gonna say, if we start the sunshine and rainbows party, then maybe, because that's what we need.
Maybe
We need another third party. Then
Yes.
things will. I may be revealing my hand a little bit here.
Anyway, what can we do? One of the big things is to stop gerrymandering. Right now, how can you, the average person, do that? Are you a judge? Are you some federal appointee? No, no. What you can do is, and we've already done part of this. We've elected Allison Riggs, right? Yeah, I'm getting this from Kate Barr's Can't Win Victory Fund, her Instagram. In 26 of next year, we can elect Anita Earls to record a re-elect her, I guess. And then in 28, we can elect 2 Democratic judges, take our courts back, and actually draw fair maps.
Yeah, and the reason he says 2, 3 are up for election. Is it likely that we'll win all 3? Probably not. Is it likely that we'll win any of them? That remains to be seen. But that depends on you. That entirely depends on you and how involved you are willing to get.
Anyway, sorry, I just want to take a second and talk about an action that you yourself can take.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think people need to hear that, because like too often we feel as though there's so much going on. And we talked a little bit about this in the last episode with our prelude to Wiley Nichols' interview. That just, you need to stop doom scrolling, and you need to actually get action. Be in the arena, actually make some and participate. And I'm not talking about donating. I'm not talking about getting involved in like the party structure, but doing like 5 simple things throughout the election cycle, throughout the year. Hell, just go to a school board meeting. That's more than most people will ever do in their entire lives. Go to a city council meeting. Sit in on one of your county commissioner board meetings. Most of them are live streamed now anyways. Because they know that most people can't make those. They hold them on like a weeknight at 6 p.m.
Well, like Raleigh City Council, some of their most important meetings are like 2 p.m. on a Tuesday.
I was about to say 2 a.m. is like some schizophrenics. It's like
2 p.m. But like,
yeah, nobody's going to be able to make that.
Yeah, exactly. We should probably try to bring this back, but like Adrian was saying earlier, the stuff with Bolyak and the Dave Act and all that stuff, it is a power grab, right? But and to kind of go back a few more minutes talking about Western North Carolina, we should point out that as we are recording this, it is May 22nd, right? Hurricane season begins June 1st, right? Because of things like Doge cuts, FEMA is underfunded. NOAA, which is the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, which is essentially the National Weather Service, is underfunded.
Yeah.
In North Carolina, especially rural and coastal regions, are exposed and unprotected. North Carolina coasts get hit by hurricanes a lot.
Yeah.
A lot. And part of it is just because of where we are just kind of geographically, how hurricanes that start off the coast of Africa kind of make their way with the ocean currents and all that.
Yeah, it's
a bunch of nerdy meteorological stuff that I love, but I won't get into on here. But like, we need to actually figure out where our priorities lie. Or well, by we I mean the General Assembly, the Republicans especially. Are our priorities empowering ourselves, stripping away power from others, or is it actually getting off our ass and fucking protecting the people of North Carolina, protecting the people who are going to be the most vulnerable because they are exposed by these cuts.
Yeah. And I brought up Tennessee earlier for a different reason, but if you are aware of like weather patterns and things like that, if you follow any of that, even tangentially, there was recently a really bad a really bad tornado that that killed a bunch of people because there was no warning. Why was there no warning? Because of exactly what CJ was just talking about. So don't think that when June comes around and hurricane season starts up, you can't depend on getting up to date. You can't depend on getting updates from either the state or federal government to actually protect you in the case of an emergency. And that's scary. That's scary for a lot of people. And I don't mean to frighten anybody by saying that, but like, this is what it's come to. This is where we're at now.
Yeah, no, it is. And I just want to point out, because I've heard this argument made a couple of times, like, oh, well, I'll just check the weather app on my phone. Where do you think where do you think the Weather Channel app, where do you think WRAL's weather app, where do you think these apps get their information? They get it from the National Weather Service. They get it from NOAA. If these places are underfunded, this data is either going to be harder to get, it's going to be more expensive to get, which then they'll have to somehow pass on to you, which you may not be able to afford. It's the data they get might be delayed and outdated by the time it gets to you.
Yeah.
This is a problem. This is a serious problem. The stuff in Tennessee, the tornadoes, they get warnings eventually, but way after they needed them. In a situation like a tornado,
yeah, not when it mattered, right?
Literally every second takes, or every second accounts. It truly does. That's not hyperbole. It does. But like the NWS, National Weather Service Center there, was essentially shut down overnight because they didn't have the funding to keep people on overnight.
Yeah.
Which, again, nerdy meteorological stuff. Tornadoes that happen at night are a lot more deadly and a lot more destructive, at least in the cost of lives, than those that occur in daytime. Because you know what? People are asleep at night.
Yeah, go figure. And you know, and we talk about political storms happening all over the state, all over the country, but like those are immaterial compared to what is coming literally from our oceans and from middle America. This is very real stuff. And so if you're angry, and you should be, like we said, that's good. You need to stay mad. And we also need to get loud, which is why we're once again at the end of this episode asking you to put down the phone that you're watching this or listening to this on. Go and call your legislators right now. Yeah. You also should support local organizing. That means getting involved with random NGOs that may be supporting you in your county. Get involved with your county party if you want to. We're not urging anybody to get involved directly with the Democratic Party, but there are plenty of other groups that are doing a lot of great work that you can get involved with. Indivisible is one that comes to mind. And those are not just liberals and leftists getting involved in that. There's Republicans there too. I've met a few of them at some of those events. And you can also tag us and DM us with things that you're concerned about. Hit us up with news stories. Hit us up with people that you want us to talk to or talk about. And also, hit us up with people you want primaried. Because if we get to the point, CJ and I were talking about this a little bit, if we get to the point where we are able to actually have a bunch of candidates on to talk to them, this is the kind of stuff that we're going to bring up. And we got a little bit of criticism for our Wiley Nickel episode. And I just want to say off the bat, also, I needed to make an edit. At the beginning of the episode, I said Chuck Hubbard, and I meant Chuck Edwards. I said maybe he could run for Chuck Hubbard's seat, and I meant Chuck Edwards. I was like, dang it, 2 Western North Carolina guys named Chuck, and I messed it up. Anyway, I needed to make a bit of an apology almost of sorts, because some people noticed that we could have gone a little bit harder on Why the Nickel. Point taken. And we will do our best to continue to hold people's feet to the fire on certain things. But we're also going to be respectful of people that come on our podcast, especially when we're interviewing them. We want to make sure that they get their message out. We trust fans of the show and people that are going to listen to this in the future to be able to discern for themselves what they believe in. We're not here to platform only progressives. I even said to somebody online, like, hell, I'll interview Republicans on here. If they're willing to take the smoke, we'll do it. We'll do it.
That might be a little bit of a roast session. I might not be able to help myself.
Hey,
honestly.
man, they'll gain 1 ounce of respect from me if they can actually sit there and take it and not get all emotional about it. But all that said, this is our pledge to you, the listeners out there, that as the podcast continues to grow, as our advocacy efforts and our involvement both in our respective fields continues to gain more experience, we aim to get better and better as time goes on, and making sure that you stay at the cutting edge of North Carolina politics. And you can certainly do that by following us everywhere that we have a podcast and everywhere that we're on online. We're on all the socials, pretty much all the socials. And you can follow us on Substack now. We post the podcast there, and we also have a bunch of links to like our Patreon if you want to support the show. So please, we would love it if you get involved and stay on the left of Old North with us. Stay safe out there, and thanks for tuning in.